Lord be with you. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to John. Now, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was in the beginning with God. All things came to be through him, and without him nothing came to be. Now what came to be through him was life, and this life was the light for the human race. It is a light that shines in the darkness, and the darkness cannot overcome it. There was a man named John. He was a Baptist sent from God. He came for testimony, to testify to the light, so that all might believe through him. Now, John was not the light, but he came to testify to the light. The true light, which enlightens everyone coming into the world. Now, he was in the world, and the world came to be through him, but the world did not know him. He came to what was his own, but his own people did not accept him. But to those who did accept him, he gave the power to become children of God, to those who believe in his name, who were born not by natural generation, not by human choice, not by man's decision, but by God. And the Word became flesh, and he made his dwelling among us. And we have seen his glory. It is the glory as of the Father's only Son, full of grace and truth. Now John the Baptist testified to him, and he cried out, saying, "This was he of whom I said, the one who comes after me ranks ahead of me, because he existed before me." From his fullness we have all received grace in place of grace. Because while the law was given through Moses, the grace and truth came through Jesus Christ. No one has ever seen God. The only Son, God, who is at the Father's side, has now revealed him. The good news, the gospel of the Lord. Amen. Please be seated. Gentlemen, you may be seated. So far, so good. They're still on their feet. Oh, happy, we heard in the first reading, happy are the feet of those who bear good news. We are a congregation today of happy feet. And the reason we are a congregation of happy feet is because we've got good news that is so good, it's impossible to literally put into words. As a matter of fact, the only way we can put the truth you are about to hear into words is through a story. And it's a story that we have heard over and over and over again. It's the most magnificent story of all, because we could never grasp the truth. We could never get the great universal concept without first seeing it concretized. And what is concretized? What happens? What are we celebrating? Why are we here? Why is it so very important? Well, you know, we had the gospel today for grown-ups. This is the Gospel of John. This is the prologue of John. They used to proclaim this gospel after every Mass because it was so very important. And it talks about the life of the Trinity before there was anything, before nothing was created. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God. And nothing was created without the Word. And the Word and God gave themselves to each other in perfect giving and perfect receiving. And as they perfectly gave and received, they created a third, which proceeded from them. It was called the very Spirit of stuff, the Spirit of God. Now, love always does something. It creates. It creates. And because it created the universe, the stars and the moon and the sun. It created everything that we see. And then the greatest of all creation, the creation in the image and likeness of God, was humankind. But something went wrong. Something went afield, and the only way that we know that it went afield is through a story. And of course, we have the story. The story is the story of Adam and Eve, and the story of the fact that they, even though they were one with God and created in God's image and they were filled with God's likeness, they wanted to be like themselves. They wanted to have it all. They wanted to be in charge. They wanted to be in control. So they ate of the fruit of the knowledge of good and evil, and they found themselves cut off. We have a name for that. We call it original sin. The little kid goes to confession. He says, "Bless me, Father, for I have sinned. I have committed 1 venial sin, 2 mortal sins, and 3 original sins." Well, the original sin is probably the only empirically verifiable doctrine of the church we've got, because all you got to do is look around. Wars, rumors of wars, hatred, anger, resentment. One tribe pitted against another tribe, one nation against another, one religion against another. We can see the universal truth that comes from that one little story. And the universal truth is this, is that we're fallen. We've fallen. I've fallen and I can't get up. And yet today, we're going to get up. We get to get up today because there's another story. There's a counter story. And the counter story isn't the story of a fall, isn't the story of a fallen human nature. It's the story of divine nature. And what is this divine nature? We've already seen it in the Trinity. Self-giving. Of course, you can't give without being open now. And once you're open now, you're open to receiving. And so the Father loves the Son loves the Father, and then the Spirit is created from that. And the whole world comes to be just beautiful, gorgeous. That's the great reality. That's the great truth. But we don't grasp that truth until we see it in the concrete, in the here and in the now. And so the all-powerful, the all-loving, the all-merciful, the all-omnipotent God does what? John tells us in the fullness of time, he becomes flesh. Flesh. God comes to earth. Now, how does he come to earth? Well, we can't get in the regular way. There's no room in the inn. There's no room where the travelers lodge. And we are the travelers in this world, and we have been lost, and we don't have any room for him because we're too wrapped up in our own problems. We're too wrapped up in our own wars. We're too wrapped up in our own hatred. There's no room for him. So where does he go? The only place he can get in isn't through the top. It's through the bottom, where the animals are. And he's born not in a bed of gold, but in a manger, in a feeding trough, where the animals feed. And he is weak. He is born as we are born, utterly, absolutely vulnerable. No power. This is God? I think one of the reasons today we have so many atheists and so many agnostics and so many people who actually hate religion because they never got this great reality. God isn't just all-powerful. If we just see God as all-powerful, and then we look at our world and we see how terrible it is, what kind of a God is that? If we see our God as sitting in some kind of a throne up in heaven, could care less about us, and in the meantime, we are so fallen, so filled with hatred that we are destroying each other, well, I don't want to believe in that God. I won't believe in that God either. Sorry, I don't know who that God is. Because in addition to God's all-powerfulness, God is all-vulnerable. He comes to us as the vulnerable one, as the one who is weak, who is a child, who is on the bottom. We don't come to the fullness of life and love from the top down. We always come from the bottom up. That's the reason our Holy Father Francis is constantly saying, you want to get to God? Don't go to the top, go to the bottom. Go to the poor, go to the forgotten, go to those who are in need. And the ultimate sign and symbol and the ultimate icon of that vulnerability is right there. And we say, that's God. God does not sit on his throne immune to our pain and suffering. He enters into our pain and suffering. He is part of our pain and suffering. He is redeeming our pain and suffering, because what does he return our hatred to him for? What does he give back? Oh, forgive them. They don't know what they're doing. And the Word became flesh and dwelt among us. It is called the incarnation. God, love, now is in the flesh, suffering with suffering humanity, rejoicing with rejoicing humanity, living with living humanity, loving with loving humanity, and teaching us how to live in our divine nature. That's the purpose. Incarnation. Incarnate. I used to, for 23 years, I thought that the incarnation had something to do with evaporated milk. No. In the flesh, as Jimmy Durante used to say, in person. God in person, in the person of Christ. Can you see it there? Can you see him there? Can you see it in the concrete? Can you see it in the one? Can you see it in the story? Can you believe it there? Because if you could see it there, maybe you could see it somewhere else, which is really hard to see. Maybe you can see it in St. Thomas. Maybe you can see it in St. Luke, in St. Ben, in St. Jacob. Maybe you can see it in your daughters and your sons. Maybe you can see it in your enemy. Now, because if you can see it there, guess what's happened to the incarnation? It wasn't something that happened 2,000 years ago. It's something that's happening right now. The Christ is being born in every child born. Every child born. Because if the truth is the truth is the truth, then it crosses denominations and religions and cultures and ways of articulating the truth. You will know, Jesus says, who you are by the fruits that you bear. Where do we see the incarnation today? Where is redemption happening today? Especially in a world that is so filled with hatred and violence and ugliness and partisanship and polarity. Well, everywhere. Open your eyes. Open your eyes. You see it in vulnerable love. I saw it in vulnerable love on 60 Minutes 2 weeks ago. I don't know if you saw it or not, but it was a story about Aleppo and the terrible bombings that had been going on and the devastation and the death that was going on. And in the midst of all this, a group of ordinary people who wore white helmets. As a matter of fact, they're called the white helmets. And the white helmets became vulnerable by risking their lives to save lives. And they would come and dig up the rubble to find life. Now, the definition of love is to go outside of yourself on behalf of the other, forgetting yourself. Now, if that's not love, I don't know what it is, because they put themselves in harm's way. As a matter of fact, the Assad regime would wait till they were trying to dig people out of the rubble, and they'd bomb them again. That's fallen human nature. It's all over the place. But it is nothing in comparison with the divine nature that dwells in each and every one of us because of the Christ. And that divine nature dwelt in each and every one of those little white-helmeted people who came to save the lives of those, and they've saved tens of thousands. Tens of thousands. And it looks like a drop in the bucket. It looks like we're losing, but we're not. What we need to know and what we need to discover and what we need to enter into is the divine in each and every one of us. In a very few moments, we're going to be saying the Creed, the Nicene Creed. There's a place in the Nicene Creed, in Latin it was very beautiful. It says, et incarnatus est. It means, and he took on flesh. And the Word of God, the divine love, took on flesh, vulnerable flesh, weak flesh, mortal flesh, but loving flesh. And he dwelt among us, and he showed us how to do exactly what he did. He was the icon, we follow him. He was the light, we are the mirror. There are two ways of spreading light. One is to be the candle, the other is to be the mirror in front of the candle. We are mirroring, we are mirror images of the Christ. Oh, we are creating the images of God, but if we are to be the likeness of God, we got to work at it. We got to work at it. And so when we get to the part that says, and incarnatus est, our new translation is a little clumsy. It says, and he was incarnated by. Fine, I'll do it. But here's what we're going to do. We're going down. You don't get to God from the top, you get to God from the bottom. We're going down on one knee. For me, this is no mean trick, because I got to get up again. Why are we going down? Because he came down from heaven. We're going down because we have a fallen nature. We're going down because we are sinful people. We're going down is because we are daughters and sons of Adam, but we are not only daughters and sons of Adam because we are coming back up again to share in the divine nature of God. And now we've got the power. Now we've got the power. That's the incarnation. That's Christmas. That's what we celebrate today. Oh, it's a wonderful, beautiful story that we tell, and we have to tell this story. But if we can't go beyond the story, if we can't go into our lives, we're going nowhere. We're just telling the story over and over again. But when it becomes incarnate in me, I become the Christ. You are the Christ. Now that you are Christ, now that you have the power to redeem, to move the needle, what are you going to do about it?